Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So it really is a pleasure, and congratulations on your appointment. You came in hot. It looks like you're about 100 feet off the deck going Mach 2, and that's the expectation there. Let me start with a question around just sort of the leadership journey, right? You've been in a lot of different places, right? Out in the private sector, had a huge portfolio at CBP, a little bit of time at ICE once upon a time. All these things sort of come together, and now you're sitting in this big chair. And so how does all that experience come together to prepare you for the job you're doing now?
Yeah. I've been absolutely blessed in my career. If I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. So I have a lot of industry experience. I'm a relatively new Fed. I ran two relatively large companies and enjoyed that. Was able to, from the outside, understand how to craft government solutions, how to look at it for a potentially solution for the government. And that was a great experience. I wanted to look at it from the other side, though, and so around 6 years, I decided to take the plunge, go into government service, and here I am right now. And I would say that government service is hard. It's a lot harder. And some of you are prior federal service in one way or another and can understand and appreciate this comment, but you don't really understand it from this perspective until you sit in this role. My unique nature is that I have both corporate and government experience now that I can lean on, and so I can see the challenges from both sides. And one of the takeaways that I think I have is that the partnership between government and industry has to be closer and has to be managed outside of the black and white of a contract. It's going to take those personal touches where we have to sit down and have candid conversations to understand what the pain points are from each side. You have a business to run, we have services to deliver, and somewhere in the middle, we're just going to have to always broker that deal. So it's been a great experience. I would never change it, and I'm hoping that through both of these opportunities, I'll be able to make this job a lot easier. But on that front, I've also served, while I was in federal service, I worked at CBP. That gave me that operational flair. I stood next to the green, the blue, and the tan, each with a different mission perspective. Went to headquarters, and hopefully there are not too many headquarters people here, but everyone has to spend their time at headquarters for various reasons. But that did help me understand, from a headquarters perspective, the view is completely different. It's business, it's politics, and it's support, somewhere in between that. And then taking all that and putting me where I'm at now has just given me a well-rounded view of, I think, how I can do successfully my job. Always being able to take off a hat and put on another hat and look at it from a different angle. And that goes both ways, right? I mean, I think we all have found and agree that, if you're going to do your time at headquarters, it's so important to have come from an operational component, right? So that you had that perspective when you're up there, right? And then to take what you learned there and then bring it back down into an operational component is really important and very powerful. Speaking of an operational component, you have a lot of priorities, right? Every time we turn on the news and everything else, and there's a lot of operational activity going on over at ICE. I don't need to tell you that. You also got the big, beautiful bill activity happening, et cetera. You have all these different priorities. How do you juggle all these running chainsaws, and what's the techniques that you're using to stay on point and make sure you're delivering the goods and everything's being accounted for? Yeah. So earlier I had said I wouldn't change a thing. I'm going to have to quickly recant that and say that I wish I had taken some sort of a dance class, because it is a
clown college, right? Juggling, yeah.
Juggling, yeah. The priorities are a challenge, and what makes it unique for ICE is the priorities are different based on the program office that we have to support. So we have OPLA, HSI, ERO.
OPLA is what, for those that might
I'm sorry, OPLA is our legal entity doing case management. attorneys, supporting judges and stuff like that. But they're the immigration law piece of it. So we have to prioritize each of their unique needs against one another and then take what limited resources we have and be able to apply it. And thankfully, within the last 2 or 3 years, technology has really jumped forward in helping us figure out how to span a very wide space with a very few resources. I'm sure you'll hear it 1,000 times throughout the day, and to include me, but AI has been a force enabler for us. We're leveraging it in every aspect that we can where we're authorized. You know, there are some guardrails that we have to manage with AI to make sure that it's ethical and within line of our legal authority. But we're really not in that area, the legal authority area with AI. We're using it in lower level administration functions. So I'd say one of the biggest enablers in prioritizing for my position is going back to what I'd said earlier, having those personal relationships with each of the program offices and sitting down with them and having candid conversations. They each have a unique perspective and think that they're the top priority. But then when I get them all into a room and have them compete for top priority and get to sit in my seat, then they quickly understand that, well, I understand we have to put radios in someone's hands. I understand that we have to get an application on a phone so that we can expedite apprehensions and processing. So maybe a policy AI bot isn't the most important thing. So that's paid off in dividends.
You know, I like any agency, certainly yours is no different. A lot of aging systems, a lot of legacy systems, a lot of we'll call them advanced operations that you're required to deliver new advanced type of capabilities. What's the techniques, what's the guiding principles there as you're sort of building that plane as you fly it, as the metaphor goes? I guess you've been over there 3 or 4 months. You're starting to recognize sort of what you have and what you don't have. What you're thinking there about how do you approach that?
Not that anyone's keeping count, but I've been there for 5 months, and I have every an X on my calendar every day. It's been, it seems like I've been there for quite a while. We came in, cybersecurity and a few other OCIO processes. We're there for reasons. The bureaucracy is there for a reason. The guardrail's there for a reason. But they're all part of a process that lengthens a process. So our first rule is do no harm, right? We have these legacy applications out there that have been baking for a while.
All in the cloud.
Not all in the cloud.
But still, aging at this point.
They're
right?
aging.
There's
They're
a lot
aging.
of,
Yeah, but
we'll
so
put dust on some of those.
Yeah, our first rule is to understand what we have out there. So we're doing a major push to identify legacy technology, another big push for identifying shadow IT, which is prevalent throughout not only ICE, but all the federal organizations. And we're trying to quickly identify what those legacy technologies are, what the shadow IT technologies are, so that we can bring them in and do risk assessments that'll give us probably one of 3 options. We're either going to envelop the capability into our OCIO monitoring, which means that we're going to have to work with the application owners and the partnerships with the corporate industry and bringing them up to current day standards. We are going to allow them to continue to operate in their program office, so HSI, OPLA, ERO, but with some very close governance and guidance from OCIO. Again, that do no harm approach is we want to make sure that we don't interrupt operations. And then hopefully in the rarest of situation, we'll sunset that technology. But before we do that, we'll have to see what we can hobble together to ensure that that service doesn't have a detriment to the mission. So it's...
Your classic sort of triage mode, spring a different one on. I know you're doing a lot of work collaborating with other components, et cetera. Maybe there's some combo platter type activity that's going to go on there as well. Perhaps as you look at, I think about things like UIP and some of these other things. Seems to make sense that as you all are starting to modernize, you're thinking about ways to collectively come together, I would guess, right? That makes sense. From a security standpoint, right, we always have to throw the security piece in this. I would say that, on balance, you all have been a really strong security shop over there, and have some really high-end talent over there, I would say, too, as do many of the other components. But what's the balance there? How are you looking at that? Is that working for you? Are they being seen as an enabler now? And I'm not just talking about business applications, right? You got these IoT devices, got a lot of different things that, you have to secure. But at the same time, these operators need this stuff, right?
Yep. Yeah, that goes back to the partnership with the program offices to help them translate the priority and the urgency of some of these applications. And where it's required, we're definitely going to push them up to the front of the line, but they still have to go through some level of cybersecurity vetting to ensure that we're not introducing harmful code into the environment, so on and so forth. So our new motto, and my team has heard me say this many times, especially the cybersecurity team, is yes, but. Or, I'm sorry, no but. So our cybersecurity team has had a wonderful, the last 5 years, they said, no, you can't do that, and they just walk away. And I'm not saying that they're walking away maliciously, they're not doing that, but they have 1,000 other things. The challenge that I posted to them now is, you can say no, but give them options, and we have to negotiate those options.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a culture change a little bit, but we're also trying to streamline how we're doing compliance check. We're leveraging some automated tool sets that do compliance check on the applications, on the code, so on and so forth. And AI, that's one of the sweet spots for AI is in compliancy and looking at code reviews, and also looking at our infrastructure to see where it can fit in and where would be the best place for it to go. So we're seeing great success there. If you're experiencing something different than what we're seeing, let's sit down and talk and try to figure out how we can work together. And I'm talking specifically about applications and legacy technology that are currently in. That service actually extends out to those that we're trying to do business with. We want to work closely with our industry partners and say, here's our security requirements. Where are you at with your security requirements? Figure out some way to meet in the middle. And one of the other initiatives that we're doing is we have a higher tolerance for risk where appropriate. We're going to assess operational needs. We're going to look at the risk, and somewhere we'll figure out how much risk we're willing to endure. As long as there's a quid pro quo, you're going to have to endure some risk as well. But if we both have skin in the game and we have great partnership, I think there's opportunity ahead.
I think that's a good reach out, a good ask, right? Look, I've sat in this chair as well, and you don't know everything, right? So you don't know what you don't know, and I know this gets into, you don't want to dime out the CISO or what have you, but if you're down there, fighting this fight and you're just beating your head up against a wall, they need to know that, right? Because these CISOs, as I like to say, I'll give you as many no's as you want, but you got to own that no and get it to a yes, right? That's the yes but, or no but. I think that's extremely important. What else is important is data. And boy, I'll tell you what, for a guy that's, I think you'll appreciate this, is more of a pliers and wires kind of guy. So am I, right? We kind of come from the infrastructure, architecture, engineering side of the house. You started with data day one, and you're still talking about data. Let's talk about data and sort of the role of data governance and all these various activities that are going on at ICE that are just sort of demanding superiority in this area.
Yeah, we're running 3 major priorities with an OCIO right now. I've published them to our internal team. We're making strides now to finalize them, and we're going to advertise those to our partners so that you're tracking the same thing that we're tracking. Zero trust, AI, and data management are our top 3 priorities. Everything that we do is going to be governed by how we manage data. Our chief data officer, who you'll hear from later in the session, will be here, and we'll talk a little bit more and unpack our data strategy. But when we talk about the future of ICE and how we're going to do business, it's all inevitably going to go back in how we're standardizing data and how we're consuming and advertising the data. That's going to come through different technologies, and we have some in mind. We're not taking anything off the table. More importantly is that the methodologies in how we're going to change the data layer, the data mesh is more important. So our approach now is, instead of going back and bestowing data requirements onto the application owners, we're going to give them a set of standards and a data mesh layer that they can register their data to that will also condition the data on the fly. We've got to get out of the habit of putting the burden of cost and data management onto the application owners. A lot of these folks have a very thin budget, and we have to help enable the transition of their data to and from their system so that it can be consumable to other subscribers. And when I'm talking to other subscribers, I'm talking about data migration from within ERO to HSI or CIS, Department of Justice, the Department of State, and they have to just be an easier, consumable product, and we're making moves there. Curran will probably talk a little bit more about the details and the architecture that we're looking at, but the big goal here is lower costs to the application owner, standardized data and conditioned data that's curated and conditioned for public consumption. And then on top of all that, we're going to have to figure out collectively how we enable a zero trust model that allows a personality or a profile to go into that data, drill down to the data all the way to the source. Another bigger issue is authoritative data sources. We do not want to copy data and replicate data. We want to manage data where it lives, and we want to identify gold data sets where possible, and try to reduce, every application has name, user account, something. There's no need for that. We should be going back to a core identity solution, tying into the core identity, and then using that information to propagate out to the applications. This isn't only an ICE initiative. The department, Antoine McCord, is looking at this as well, and he's trying to put some bones to that so that all DHS CIOs are trying to go along the same path and the same line. And I think he's doing an exceptional job in that. He's got his priorities out. He's briefed us on those. And we got a lot of head shaking in the CIO community within DHS of the path forward. And I'm pretty excited. I mean, everything that we're doing, it all ties back to data. And thankfully, we're all in unison saying, yep, data is where we need to go.
Absolutely. And I used to remember when we were talking about these nation-state actors and getting into our environments, et cetera, and I was just a kid, but I said, look, they're not coming in here to look around and see how cool our architecture is or what kind of technology. They're in there to get the data, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. What else is all about is your workforce, personnel, skill sets, et cetera. Yep. A lot of activity going on over there, I know, and let's just talk about what is currently going on, what's on the forefront. Is ICE hiring? Where are you at with this whole thing? Right? You've been there for 5 months, as you described. You have a general sense of what you're dealing with now, and you know what sort of the North Star is. I think the secretary on down's been pretty clear. Mm-hmm. How's that looking?
Yeah, well, obviously we're doing a massive hire sprint for officers and agents to get to the administration's goal of hiring so many HSI and ERO folks. We are kind of maybe second or third priority to that for very good reasons. But we do have our pool of candidates that we're getting ready to push out, and it's extremely important. Actually, it's a blessing in some regards because it's given me time to look at OCIO and say, okay, what do we want to look like in the future? And then start crafting our hiring strategy around what that future looks like. We're going to leverage some existing tools. We're going to try to move away from the Title V GS hiring and move more into a Title VI hiring structure where we're going to leverage cyber talent management system for those cybersecurity related roles. And that's going to go into your applications development, obviously your SOCs and different CISO functions. But where it makes sense, we're also going to leverage CTMS to hire application developers. So
if I may, just for those at Title V, Title VI, CTMS, can you go just another tick down and say, so what's the concept behind that? What is that?
My
so
apologies.
People understand. There might be people in the room that might be interested in in looking at that. You all know how I feel about public service, so please.
Yeah. So Title V is your tried and true general service employee, GS rate, X all the way up to a GS 15 with various steps in between that allow you opportunities to advance within each of your GS categories. Title VI is a new hiring authority that DHS has called Cyber Talent Management System. What makes this unique from the prior is that it's exclusively focused on cybersecurity and all aspects of cybersecurity, from risk management to operations and everything in between. It's pay banded, so the government's able to afford a larger salary for candidates. It is performance-based, it's a salary, so the idea of the 40-hour work week is still there, but it's not as hard and in charge. But some of the other benefits that they give you are retention bonuses, training bonuses that are far superior than GS. And so the goal is to attract and retain cyber talent and continue their education within the government by continuing involving their capabilities through training in OJT.
And there are opportunities, of course. Now, how does the hiring process work? That's different as well, right?
Yeah, CTMS is test-based hiring. If you go to USA Jobs /CTMS, it'll pull up the portal and it will explain to you the process. But in a nutshell, you will test into one of the, I think, 6 or 7 different categories. It's a very, very thorough test where they're going to ask you anything from port assignments on a firewall to policy and CNA controls, everything in between. We've actually had some feedback to say that's a little too broad, so we're going to try to narrow that down a little bit to be more specific for the type of individual that we're hiring. The benefit, though, is if you test into the process, your resume goes into a pool and you are an applicable candidate that can be used across any hiring manager within the organization, and they can just pull you right out of the pool. You're good for a year, which is a big difference from Title V, where you would apply, you'd make a cert list, and then if you didn't get that cert list, then you would have to apply for another job. This cuts away a lot of that bureaucracy and paperwork.
And remember, cyber wide swath, right? This isn't just the folks working in the SOC. These are people that are, in all the way up into the business applications and everything in between, right? So a big swath. When do you expect to have that out, sort of roughly? When will people see that?
Well, CTMS has been out for around 2 years. As a matter of fact, I'm a CTMS executive, which is akin to the SES, but I get paid a little more. So don't tell anyone. But
as far as your announcements going out,
the announcements are going to hit the street relatively soon. I'm hesitant to give you an exact date because
but soon, right?
Yeah, soon. Well, and the beauty is, again, you apply for one and you're applicable to all of them. So
okay, all right. So keep your eyes open for those that might be looking for some new opportunities in 2026.
And by the way, it does go all the way up to executive level. So we will be considering hiring executives as well as your senior cybersecurity specialists, all the way down. And they'll actually go all the way down to developmental.
Let's talk about partnerships. You touched on how important that is, and you're in a unique situation. You played on both sides of the fence in different components, et cetera, so you understand this better than even most, I would say, and have worked with a lot of different types of partners out there in your role at CBP, right? Everything from port authorities, right? They have their own kingdom, to all the folks here that are supporting you in various ways, to everything in between, including other, parts of the government. So talk about the partnership relationships, how those work, why are they important, what's the leverage point there, what worked for you, and maybe what doesn't work, right? So everyone understands that too.
Sure.
By the way, if I may, I think Megan mentioned it. We are going to break at about, maybe 5 or so more minutes and take some questions. We're going to fire away on questions, and then we're going to break on the questions, come back. He's got a couple more things he wants to close out with, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
What was the question?
The question was around hiring. No, wait, partnership.
Partnership. So I'll just, because I know we're limited in time, I'll just probably hit a high.
We're doing fine on time. Yeah.
Oh, okay. As I mentioned, partnerships are going to play a key role in how ICE moves forward. Because we're moving so fast, we really rely on our partnerships with industry to come in and, as best possible. You're not going to be successful in every portion of ICE, but look at how we're set up and how we're established, and help us identify, those blind spots. We are a relatively large organization. We're nationwide. We do operate in some silos, and I think everyone here knows that, so I'm not saying anything that's brand new. So we don't have visibility into every single corner of operations. Typically, industry does. You guys know where some of the bones are buried that we don't know. Let's talk about those. Bring them to us. Let's figure out how we can work together to bolster down on ICE capabilities. You're probably aware of some of our operational requirements better than ICE OCIO is, although probably give me another 2 months and I'll challenge anyone that, because I'm in the trenches. I went to St. Paul and I'm trying to run shoulder to shoulder with some of these guys, but you may have a different perspective on how technology can help advance their capabilities. Talk to us. Let's see what you have to offer. The request, though, that I have is time is limited, so when we talk, we want to get right down to brass tacks, and we want to know how your technology is meeting a very unique and specific requirement to ICE. And as much as I would love to sit down and talk with almost everyone here, the reality is it's a finite amount of time, and the days where you come in and you say, this is our technology, you tell us how we can fit in, it's not there anymore. And I apologize in advance, but I'm going to have to request that industry help us clap some of this out and say, this is what we have, this is your requirement, this is how we can marry the two together, and that would speak volumes. Also, we were talking earlier about data management and AI, kind of closing the loop with that. We are trying to automate as many of our business functions as possible. Anything that's, and these are not targets, but examples, lower level cybersecurity positions, lower level network operations positions, lower level service desk positions, administrative functions. A lot of these things can be automated with the data that we currently have. We just have to train models to help us. So we have a chat capability and an AI team inside of ICE. We're calling it Stella. And we have a chief innovation and AI officer who's leading the charge. If your technology is something that you think we can leverage to help automate some of those lower level functions, let me know. I'll get you in touch with the right team. And we'll make sure that you have an opportunity to see what we're doing, what capabilities we have, and if you can build something within the confines of our platform, it makes life a little bit easier for us. If not, then he'll at least be able to ferret it out and understand what you guys are offering and help you guide your capability into our architecture. But key takeaways there, AI automation, cost reduction is a big one, but that's a topic for a whole other event. What was the third one? Making sure that your technology matches, because I can't help you guys connect all the dots all the time.
Yeah, and speaking of partnerships, I should have brought this up with the CTMS and I really want to thank Dustin in public here for his unwavering support in the partnership of the U.S. Cyber Challenge. That's something that we do every year where we're taking about, probably about 200 students this year and putting them through a cyber boot camp of sorts. We always reach out to the CIO community and to the CISO community to help us give real-world examples, getting all the way to the point now where we're going to get some of them involved with CTMS and hopefully become some of those CTMS candidates. So we appreciate the sponsorship that many of you provide for that. Really important. That's that's the emerging talent coming out of these universities that we want into these capability areas. And I think that's a real good win-win and another different type of partnership, if you will. But certainly do appreciate that. Let's talk about user experience. I'm so saddened that Martha Doris isn't here because she is Mrs. CX, as many of you know, in the federal service, and has really led the charge there. And I know that's super important to you as well about making sure that whatever it is you're putting in that operator's hand, is going to be a good experience, right? So there's internal employee experience, right, the whole display, and then there's this external, right, I need to find where this person is or what have you, and that kind of experience. Just talk about sort of how you all focus your attention on that, how you think about that as you're incorporating and building these environments.
Yeah, we're definitely knocking off some dust from the old school, let's practice the ancient art of conversation, right? And we're taking that same approach with user experience. We want to bring user experience back into the mix for different reasons. The key reason is that if you run through a simple operation with ICE officers, obviously our primary customer, their processing time for booking a detainee is approximately 45 minutes. That's 45 minutes that they're sitting down, typing the data from one application into the next application, and for every minute that ticks by that they're not back out on the streets is time lost in trying to apprehend the next person, sex offender, human trafficking, and stuff like that. So it's very important to us to try to figure out how we are going to reduce that processing time, and that comes through an understanding of what is the user experiencing and the utilization of their applications. And when we developed the app, it was perfect at the time, but now the technology we're trying to push it further and further out into the hands of the officers and the agents. So now we're talking about what information can we give them on their phone that they can start filling out the booking, and then by the time they get back into the detention center, they're just transmitting the file over to an administrative person that is specialized in those services and take that burden off the officer. So that starts with understanding how they process from the very edge and all the way through. We are spending a significant amount of time, and we just started in trying to map out those business processes. I know for some of the folks here that may be a legacy term, but Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma, there's a real place for that right now. And trying to get rid of all of the unnecessary steps. We have another application that, by the way, side note, you'd never give an IT person the opportunity to develop an application without really good requirements, because we built this application that I will not name by name that had every bell and whistle on it that you could possibly think of. And for the developing team and the program, this thing was the bee's knees and the cat's meow. It was the best. You give it to an operator and like, what in the Sam heck are you giving me? And they didn't understand how to use it. So we just took over that application, and we're getting ready to go through the whole experience of revamping, not the tool, but, well, in concept, we're revising the business process, and we're going to take something that took someone 20 minutes a day to go out and fill out a simple form down to about 30 seconds. That is revolutionary for these guys, and they said, I'm going to challenge them to this. I'm going to kind of hold it to them that if I could solve that problem and one other problem, that they would make a bronze statue out in front of me of ICE. So I'll be sitting next to you.
Hey, listen, 20 minutes a day times 100 times 1,000 times 5,000. Boy, I tell you, that adds up to horsepower that you can go reuse. If you haven't listened to James McCammon and Janet Pence talk about sort of getting those hours back to the workforce. This is all about that, that digital experience, if you will. Speaking of that, let's talk about metrics and measuring, and how does one understand and ensure that, hey, you hit the mark, right? You've done all this work, you've delivered it out there. We don't want to find out when the operator's screaming at us that, hey, we didn't hit the mark. How are you doing your measuring, and what is the sort of instrumentation process to make sure you're answering the mail?
Yep. It goes without saying that it all ties back to data. But the SLAs, the metrics, and how we're managing business has kind of been another thing that we've lost. And they're baked into a lot of our contracts with you, and we certainly appreciate you reporting on those metrics. But at the end of the day, we have to define better metrics on how we're doing business, how we're baselining business, how we're performing against the baseline, and then what are the benefits to both sides in meeting those goals. In some situations, it may be to move the markup higher because we didn't set it right to begin with. In other cases, we're gonna have to bring it down or get you additional resources. It's a quid pro quo tool that we should openly negotiate and talk about, even post-contract award, which will, obviously I know that will have some implications on cost. But we're starting to take metrics more seriously, and we are going to ensure that whatever metrics we put in place is going to be able to answer the mail of so what. You know, I don't want to see legacy metrics. I don't want to see metrics that don't really help me make business decisions. These metrics have to be tied to something that's going to have a ramification, positive or negative, so that we can make adjustments as we go along. Furthermore, metrics that we developed at the start of the contract may no longer be relevant or important to us as the contract matures. So we're going to have a partnership there in figuring out what the new metrics are. And then ultimately, it's going to be about what did we deliver? Did we deliver it correctly, on time and on schedule? And everyone knows about that. But you know, how are we operating? Can we be more efficient? Or some of those key metrics that I really want to start targeting. There are a few folks here that I've talked to earlier about if we meet metrics and we enable automation within a contract, we'll divest pieces of that contract, but we want to reinvest in that same contractor. You know, we're not in the business to put anyone out of business. We're in the business to make sure that our partnership and our operations are moving forward and fast. And again, partnership and flexibility are part of that. So when we find opportunities to reduce costs in one area, we're going to work with you to reinvest those costs into other areas on the same contract so that we can rinse and repeat in agreed upon area. So it's that, again, partnership and that quid pro quo that we want to maintain and manage.
Stretch that dollar, if you will, and get more value out of it. Sounds awesome. All right, let's take some questions. This gentleman had his hand up first. Let's see if we can get a mic to you. Ladies and gentlemen, General Ragland.
Dustin, because of the mobility of your workforce in ICE, can you share any observations about your pushes to support, because between ERO and the HSI workforce, we're all aware of the mobility of your workforce, but any insights or any comments, thoughts as far as where you are now, where you're reaching to go?
Mobility is a big thing. We are trying to, first we have to focus inside the building, right? And ICE traditionally hasn't gotten a lot of infrastructure funds. We have some infrastructure funds. So now we're moving away from your traditional landline poles, and we're moving almost exclusively to Wi-Fi in all of our new locations, which there are going to be a lot of them. So that's inside the building, but now you're talking about outside the building. And a lot of the applications that we're building and employing, Eagle, Mobile Fortify, Mobile Identify, they're all going to be mobile applications. So we're looking at our mobile platforms, making sure that they're robust enough to be able to handle those applications, that it's doing something for the operator, and we're bringing technology and pushing as far as we can, Tom. That, of course, takes some scrutiny from the cybersecurity team because we're still in this legacy mindset of...
Yeah, of the desktop being the first port, and I'm with you.
I've never gotten that, but I'm just trying to bring our teams together and say, look, these devices, these mobile devices, tablets, mobile phones, even to some of the thin clients, we should not be treating them any different than we are with desktops. And for some reason, we keep going back, and I have two infrastructures now. I have a mobile infrastructure, and I have a legacy infrastructure, and I need to bring those together. So it's multi-pronged. So cybersecurity, working with the application developers with a Stella chat that we had talked about earlier. The very first idea is that we're going to get an analytical tool that is great when you use it on the computer, but that's not where these guys are going to use it. They need to use it on the phones, be able to snap a picture, process that through AI, give them some indication of what they're looking at. And by the way, side note, when I reference AI, They're wholly separate. They're a tool. There's always going to be human intervention between AI capability and what we're processing. So I just want to make sure that clip somehow makes it into everything.
Next question. Got somebody over here, looks like, yeah. 2 people there. We'll try to keep speeding them up here because we want to get as many as we can.
Good morning. Mark McGee with Acoma. Thanks for your time. Given the one big beautiful bill resources that have come to ICE, my understanding is ICE is going from roughly a $10 billion organization annually to something around $25, $30 billion annually. That has to put strain, I would assume, on the IT infrastructure and other systems that you run. My understanding also is that there's maybe $500 million for IT modernization. Just curious as to how you're planning to use that and possibly address any strains that more officers, et cetera, are going to place on things. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mark. So we're renegotiating the amount of money that we have for OCIO and infrastructure costs, but I can tell you that the lion's share of that's going to be absorbed by equipment, licensing, in some cases infrastructure, but then go back to my earlier note where we're going to lower costs for infrastructure and really leverage Wi-Fi. Back-end infrastructure, we're pretty scalable as we are right now. I'm not going to say with any degree of certainty that where we are now is where we're going to be in the next 3 years. So our our engineering team is looking at that, constantly looking at that. If you haven't met with them, India is our division chief there. I'm sure she would be more than happy to talk with folks that have ideas on how to reduce our costs and make sure that we're maintaining mission in a scalable way.
I think you were talking about negotiating. There's a lot of money in the building with the other programs, right? You're trying to pull some of that in to make sure that you're supporting them. How much of the business applications that you were talking about earlier that are going to get, refactored or, modernized, et cetera, through this big, beautiful bill, how much of that do you think will get accomplished sort of at the tail end of that? The majority of it?
Yeah, we have some really good leads. We're working closely with HSI and ERO. They have some wonderful leadership. Some of you may have met them at Edge. Matt Elliston and Sean Fitzgerald, both are Leo types, and they're driving the requirements. We're executing the requirements, and we work closely with these guys. I would love to say that I'm 90% confident, but I have to say we're going to be 100% successful. We were not an opportunity to fail.
Next question, right here.
Good morning, I'm Brianna from Vannevar. Thank you so much for your time. We're a small, agile company building agentic workflows. And I'm wondering, I really appreciate you going through your top 3 priorities and talking about the modernization of existing systems. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more to how you're thinking about bringing new tech into the building and how you're maybe breaking down some of the barriers of the complex FAR process and what advice you might have for smaller companies.
Yeah, again, that's a partnership thing. We can't do homework for every company that comes in. When you talk to us about your technology, usually the second or third question that I ask is, how do we do business with you? So you're going to have to do the upfront work with GSA to get yourself on contract vehicles, or through strategic partnerships with the partners that have prime contracts in, and negotiate that deal. We typically try not to get into the business of telling primes what to do with their subs, but that's my big, and by the way, I don't know what the FAR looks like right now. I don't know what the state of the FAR is. I've been briefed on it a few times. I know it's changing, but.
And we're going to hear a little bit of that this afternoon. Sarah's going to give us a top line on that. Next question. Get a couple more in here before we let you close it out. Yeah, back here I see. What's that? Where's Megan? Oh, there she is. We got how much time? One more? Okay. Yeah, because you got one or two things you want to say here.
Yeah, Dale Partridge from Mantech. Regarding the authoritative source, what is ICE and really at the larger scale, what is DHS doing with the data owners to help open that up and so they will share their data with all these other applications? Because that usually tends to be some of the challenges getting access to that authoritative source, because a lot of them want to keep hold of it because they're afraid to get changed or lost or some other challenges.
Yeah, there are some, we've structured more MOAs and ISAs in the last 6 months than we probably have in the last 7, 8 years. There's a willingness to share. There are limitations to what can be shared because of PII, data access sensitivities, case data sensitivities, but a lot of the bureaucracy that was previously encountered isn't there, or it's still there, but it's being it's an easier process. People are motivated to get these agreements in place now. But it still involves conversation with the CDOs and with the program or the data owners. And once we get the two of them to agree, the CDOs come in, talk about the data, CISOs come in, they talk about the agreement and the partnership and connectivity. And we've seen that revised process work very, very well for us internal to DHS from component to component, but also outside of DHS with other federal organizations like the Department of Justice, the Department of State, and a few others. So
You had two other things you wanted to wrap up with.
yeah, so maybe if we all play a drinking game and everyone takes a shot when I say partnership with industry, we would all be really laughing right now. But I do take that seriously, and to kind of show you and extend the first opportunity, ICE is going to be hosting quarterly industry days. They're going to be target focused on a specific technology set. The first one's going to happen, I think, in the second week of February, and it's going to focus on big data type of products. So when we talk about big data, we're talking about what are the data sources that we can tap into or the analytical capabilities that will help us refine our case management, our law enforcement initiatives, and how to increase the value of the data that we have so that we can get out to the targets with high fidelity and confidence that when someone goes somewhere, they know that something's going to be there. So the industry day is going to be our first initiative focused on big data through prioritization internal to ICE with our HSI, ERO, and OPLA partners. We'll come up with some other themes that we'd like to focus in on. That's not to say that you're still not welcome to engage OCIO directly, but it just gives you a larger and easier vehicle to get into us with a very targeted audience. So,
And in person.
And in person.
I
Yes.
figured you all would like that, right?
Yes, as much as we all love public speaking in person.
The bell has rung. It's time to go. Dustin, I can't tell you enough how much I really do appreciate this, and I'm sure the audience does as well.